Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people.
Well, there we have it. After biting our nails for a couple of weeks to find out how this debate might play out, it played out. And it played out surprisingly similarly to what we had predicted. Donald Trump brought his C game, as is typical with him in this so-called failing nation. And in contrast to that Prince of Darkness, we had the bright, shining beacon that is Kamala Harris, who stood for what America will look like in the future rather than what it looked like in the past under Donald Trump's leadership. And the difference could not be more stark. And I was very pleased to see that clearly Kamala Harris had done the work. She'd done the prep. She'd done the rehearsal. She'd put the work in. Donald Trump had done nothing. As I predicted, he was all over the place. And I said that he would only really go on two topics, and he did. He kept bringing it back to the border and immigration and to the economy, the two things that he thinks that he can win on despite not having a plan. And that was exposed as clear as day in this debate. I love the opener when Kamala Harris walked up to Donald Trump. He was walking slowly and sloth-like. And so she kind of got to his podium, walked straight past hers, got to his to shake his hand. And he wasn't really expecting that. You know, if it had been rehearsed, they would have walked evenly into the middle and shaken hands together. And I loved what she said. She went, Kamala Harris, as if he didn't know who she was. An amazing way to start that meeting. And it is actually their first time actually meeting. And so it was respectful, but also very amusing for her to introduce herself. The first question Kamala Harris was asked, or Vice President Harris, I should say, was asked, is whether Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago. And she talked about being raised as a middle-class kid. And she said, I'm actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. And she made a point to attack Donald Trump's tax policy, the idea that he really only wants to cut taxes for billionaires. And Donald Trump, in his rebuttal, he zeroed in on what his campaign believes are two of his strongest issues, inflation and undocumented people. And he said, we've had a terrible economy because inflation has, which it's really known as a country buster, it breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before. Well, obviously that isn't great English, and I'm repeating him verbatim, but inflation is coming down. There was a pandemic between the end of Trump's presidency and the beginning of Joe Biden's. The fact that that got dealt with, because it certainly wasn't dealt with under Donald Trump, and the fact that it's still on the way down, and in fact only yesterday there was another announcement that inflation is down and jobs numbers are up. I mean, this is an example of how the Democrats handle the economy. Traditionally, always better than Republican presidents, and certainly better than Donald Trump.
4 sentences that are just, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
They then talked about Project 2025 after squabbling over the economy, and it was actually Kamala Harris that brought it up, this right-wing blueprint to remake the U.S. government, authored by former Trump officials, and a kind of dystopian document for this Christian nationalist America. And he was like, I have nothing to do with it. He said, that's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it. Purposely, he said, I'm not going to read it. It was a group of people that got together and they came up with some ideas. And then he said, I guess some good, some bad. Find people on both sides. Same story with Donald Trump. You can never hold him down. And she just shook her head. She was like, everybody knows. And so his denial of this was another example of how Donald Trump is clearly not telling the truth. And I think people know that. I think it's very clear. He knows the Heritage Foundation is behind this. He knows that Kevin Roberts, their leader, has spoken at events of his, and he's previously said that he and Trump have talked several times. The Project 2025 authors and supporters contain a ton of former Donald Trump administration officials. So that's basically his team, because he hasn't got a plan. If it wasn't for Project 2025, Donald Trump wouldn't have a plan. I thought the moderators did rather well, surprisingly. They definitely did fact-checking in a way that CNN did not do, and that was important to fact-check on the fly. And Lindsay Davis, no relation, pressed Trump to explain his policy on abortion, and she actually noted that he has changed his views repeatedly. And he said that by going through how various states have handled the issue and falsely claiming that in some states babies are killed after they are born, which she then fact-checked and said, by the way, murder is illegal in every state. He then thanked the Supreme Court justices who voted to overturn Roe. And he actually misstated the number. He said 6 voted for the reversal of Roe. It was actually 5 that voted to do away with the precedent. But, he's never been one for detail. And Kamala Harris had an excellent response to this. Obviously, she cares deeply about this issue. And she said that Trump should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. She said in 20 states now, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. And in one state, it provides prison for life. And Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, and she said, understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, of a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body. Donald Trump is an old white man. He cannot argue with this. And he's already taken ownership for the reversal of Roe, and very proudly, I might add. So this is the defining issue, I think, for this election. Just a final few thoughts. I was really pleased to see Kamala Harris use these moments to really isolate Donald Trump for being weird, for being an authoritarian, for being unhinged and being somebody who clearly is not fit to be president. And she pointed out several times. She was like, well, you're going to hear a whole pack of lies from this guy. And then she's like, there you go. I told you he was going to lie, because he just lied constantly. And it was wearing him down. But it was when she goaded him about things like crowd size and about how people are bored at his rallies and they leave, or that his father gave him $400 million and he managed to squander that and go bankrupt 6 times. These things really got to him, and it was really good to see somebody finally holding him to account to his face.
Honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
We forget that Donald Trump is 78. He's nearly 80 years of age. And whilst his rhetoric doesn't seem to age, physically he does not look the same as he did 4 years ago. And that is a sign of deterioration, both mentally and physically. But he does not have the fight in him. So what he does is he just goes for these old tropes. And the fact that he reiterated that the election had been stolen in 2020, despite 60 court cases, he still maintained that he thought he was the legitimate president. Anybody watching, hearing him say anything as crazy as that is going to be like, not that guy. Kamala Harris presented an image of sophistication, of confidence, and of optimism for a future in America under the leadership of truly thoughtful people. She actually talked about individuals and how people feel. And Donald Trump does not have that ability. He does not possess empathy. It's not in his wheelhouse. He is a narcissist, and he is deeply flawed as an emotional individual. He is deeply stunted in his emotional growth. And Kamala Harris is the epitome of that. She represents that kind of auntie that you want to give a hug to, or a stepmom in Mamala. So I've already heard them say that they are offering him another debate in October. I do not want another debate. One was enough. I don't think my heart rate could take it. But I was very pleased to see that Kamala Harris had a great night, and she has proven that she is not just a very capable debater, but she is a very capable future president of the United States. I'm Anthony Davis. You can catch me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.